The truth's around here somewhere. Welcome everyone to Mail Fuzz TV. I am Peter, and today I'm going to be talking about the X-Files Season 1, Episode 20. It's called Darkness Falls. And this one's set out in the forest, out in the wilderness, and it's about, well, bugs and insects. It's these green glowing bugs that are hundreds of years old. It's funny, I compared it to the Thing style episode at the end of the last review when I read the description, because of the isolated kind of location, small group of characters. Some of them are going to get picked off one by one. I wasn't prepared that I'm saying this out loud what the premise says. That was a very similar thing where it was like a bug or something that came out of the ice because they'd been digging into the ice that was centuries or thousands of years old. Similar thing here. It's something that comes out of a tree that some loggers have cut down, that it's this dormant thing, this bug that it works differently than that. Of course, it doesn't change people body snatcher style here. This just cocoons them and kills them and feeds on them, I presume. But there's a lot of parallels with that episode. Now, the more I'm thinking about it, even beyond the surface level stuff that I kind of saw coming just last week. But that's not to critique it too much, because I had a good bit of fun with this. I do have a couple of things to say about kind of how quickly it wraps up. It feels like it suddenly just ends in a way that felt like there was probably more things they could do with the premise and more story they could tell, some more things they could have paid off. I guess what I'm saying is it feels like the first 40 minutes of a movie, and then the last few minutes they quickly wrap it up, as opposed to getting the rest of the movie. Kind of, it has that kind of vibe to it. So I'll give it a bit of a critique for that. But what we did get, I did quite enjoy, and I did enjoy the location again. This idea of the solitude of no help being anywhere in the horizon, of being trapped out somewhere, cut off from society. Even more so, there's a very particular rule in this, and I love rules when it comes to these kind of things. There's just something simple you can understand, but you can do a lot with. And in this case, much like Pitch Black, the creatures don't like the light. They won't come into the light. So the one defense they have against whatever this is to make sure they've got light. But of course, they've only got so much gasoline for the generator, and that's kind of running out throughout the episode. It does a really good job of every so often. It'll do just a quick shot of the generator to sort of remind the audience they've only got light in this cabin at night time because of this generator. Once that's not operating anymore, they might be screwed. But that was actually one of the things that I thought we could have done more with, is that maybe they could have like tried to prep for that by trying to, build some fires or something, something alternative to what they were currently using. I'll get into all that. So a bunch of loggers go missing, and we get like a cold open with them all running about at night, and we get a green out, I guess we'll call it. You know how in a movie or TV sometimes you'll get a white out, which is where it'll fade to white instead of black. That happens here, but with green. It fades to a green screen, not to be confused with the use of a green screen in visual effects. Seemingly, these loggers are dying by whatever these green bugs are, these glowing green bugs. Mulder wants the case, would you believe it? Because there was a similar story of a bunch of loggers disappearing in the 30s, I think he said. If it wasn't the 30s, it was something like that. So he wants to go in. Scully immediately's got the joke. She's cracking little digs about how he must think it's Bigfoot. To which Mulder very seriously says, no, there's no way this is Bigfoot. And that comes up later when she's like, yeah, you were right, this is definitely not Bigfoot. But one of the interesting things that this sets up is that we have characters, as in the guest stars, who are kind of on opposing sides of kind of an ongoing... I think Scully calls it a war. I mean, war is maybe a bit of a harsh term for it, but the idea, you've got these loggers, and you've got the sort of the forest ranger and the people who are behind the loggers, and then you've got the eco-terrorists, you've got the tree huggers, as the other guys will call them, who are, sabotaging their equipment, who are planting traps, planting spikes on the road to like burst their tires and things like that, just sabotaging their equipment. But in turn, of course, them sabotaging all this equipment has made it a lot harder to survive when these bug things have shown up, right? That is part of the fun of this, is that it's like, okay, if they had all of the cars functioning, they could get away during the day, no problem. If all of this other stuff was working, it would probably be easier and not quite as tense. But it puts them all in this back foot where we're okay. We've got a generator. That's it. We can't drive back. It's too far to walk before nighttime again, and we can't be trapped out here at night. So it sets all this stuff up, and it plays with that throughout the rest of the episode, and I do enjoy that setup. But what's good about setting up all these characters is you have naturally this more neutral character, Larry, who's like the forest ranger, who kind of agrees in principle with what the eco-terrorists are doing, but not their methods. He cares about the environment, but he's kind of this neutral middleman. And then you've got the old man with the mustache, Humphreys, I think his name is. He is like, he's like, oh, they filthy tree huggers, they keep doing this, they probably murdered my men, we need to arrest them. He's adamantly against them. And then a little bit into the episode, we get a character played by Titus Welliver, I think you say his name. I know him as the Man in Black from Lost. It was actually kind of weird seeing him with hair, because I'm so used to him being bald. But he shows up, and he's the only eco-terrorist we see. He still thinks the rest of his team, barring one, are alive, but we find out later that they've all died in his absence, so he's the only eco-terrorist that has survived. There's a lot of tension between him and the old guy with the mustache, the button heads, having very strong opinions about each other, and the other one is the villain, and Mulder and Scully are caught in the middle of all this. But I think all of that stuff it adds a lot to the episode, because like Scully herself says, it feels like they've been thrust into a conflict that was already ongoing. And the conflict is actually completely separate from what the threat of the episode is, but they're so blindsided by the conflict, and they're so adamant about that back and forth, that it does kind of like give this framework for everything else to kind of form around, and it motivates certain decisions. The old man with the mustache refuses to believe that there's anything in the forest that'll kill them. He thinks that the eco-terrorists are the ones that have killed people, and he ignores all the advice. He goes out into the night to try and fix the truck and gets killed. He's the first of the sort of the main group to be killed, and the others have already found a body. Like Scully, Mulder, and the I was going to say sheriff, but he's not a sheriff. He's the ranger. They find this cocoon body. It's almost a little it's not quite Predator, because it's more like a spider web cocoon, but like the idea of them finding it up in a tree feels very... They actually hoist Scully up. They get like a pulley system going and put her up there, and she's having a great time cutting into this thing in her very, very early 90s jacket. Those colors are... You can't mistake those colors as anything other than late 80s, early 90s. Which is neither a positive or a negative, merely an observation that stuck out to me. So, yeah, like they're sort of theorizing, what all this is. There's a lot of microscope talk and looking at the bugs, and the big thing, of course, is they find this big old tree. One of the things that the loggers have been accused of is cutting down trees that are supposed to not be touched, that are marked because they're super old and they're supposed to be preserved. But it seems that they've cut down into one of these old trees, which is actually the tree that these bug things have came out of, because they notice a weird layer in the tree trunk. I learned some things about trees this episode. I didn't realize the middle of a tree, of an old tree at least, that's very thick, is mostly dead wood, and it's only the few outer rims that apparently are alive technically and are benefiting from the water and things like that. I did not know that. Assuming they're telling the truth. It is a TV show. They could be talking complete nonsense, but it sounds reasonable enough to someone who knows nothing about trees. Beyond the obvious. So, what this episode plays into is that we have this central little cabin where they can go back for safety. And at nighttime, it is all they have. They've got like the light that's in there. And at first, they don't necessarily immediately believe that there's a danger outside, but of course as the episode goes on, they become more and more pretty sure that it is dangerous to go outside. There's like residue over things, and the old man of course doesn't come back when he went wandering, and obviously they hope that he maybe went and found help, or he hiked back or whatever, but it becomes kind of clear that that's not the case as the episode progresses. And one of the things that I felt like it didn't pay off as much as I thought it would. And to be fair, I actually was kind of on the Rangers side in this argument. I was fully on board that Mulder was an idiot here, because about 2/3 into the episode, the eco terrorist, whose name's Spinny, he is stealing a battery from one of the trucks that aren't working because they've been sabotaged with like stuff in the gas tanks and things like that. But he's got one of the batteries out, and Mulder confronts him about it, and he says, "Look, I left the two remaining survivors in my team just a couple of valleys over, and they only had enough generator juice for a day or whatever. They're going to die if I don't go back. But there's a Jeep over there, our Jeep's over there. I can come back and get you. So let me go. It's like the best chance we've got." But late in the next scene, because it cuts away before we get like a conclusion to it, we find out that Mulder did let him go. But not only did he let him take the battery, which to be fair, there wasn't much they were going to do with the battery anyway, but he also let him take some gas. And what Mulder clearly didn't realize is that he took the last of the gas, meaning whatever's in the generator is all they have got. So they end up having to like sort of bunk in like the main part of the cabin, because they have to just use one light because it's all they've got left, and they want to like, you know, if they're all in one light bulb radius, then that's like that'll use less energy. So that, you know, like they're having to really sort of like ration their juice, as it were, to survive through the night. And even then, they don't know if they're going to get any help. You know, I think Mulder fixed the radio briefly and didn't even know if he was getting a message out to anywhere, but was trying his best to. So they're hoping that message got out. But really, honestly, the eco-terrorists coming back to get them is kind of their best hope right now. But when they find out Mulder let this guy go, the Ranger's pissed. He's like, "What, you just took his word for it that he would come back?" I mean, don't get me wrong, I wasn't as, you know, jumping to he's a murderer like the other guy was, but he still needs to be questioned, and there's a reason to think that he's untrustworthy. You know, he's the one who's been planting all these traps and possibly shot at my vehicle, which something that was mentioned at the start of the episode. And, you know, this is a bit of a foolish thing that you've done here, and he gets really pissed about it. And to be honest, I was on his side. I was thinking, yeah, Mulder, what the hell? You didn't stop to question how much gas he was taking or check how much you had left before you let him just walk off with some when he might not come back. Given that gas is the only thing that's keeping you assholes alive, it feels a bit of a dumb choice. So I really appreciate that Scully seems to also think this is a stupid ass decision, and she comes in to grill him, and Mulder's like, "Okay, like I agree it was maybe not the right choice, but can we just not talk about it?" Honestly, Scully's demeanor and tone this entire scene, which is, "Mulder, you effed up," I felt was entirely justified, and it was kind of nice that Mulder just flat out did something wrong, because the show often has him just be right about things, sometimes miraculously in a way that feels like not plot armor. It's kind of, you know, because it's not armor, but plot precision. No, I don't know what you call it, but you know what I mean. Like he just gets things right all the time. It was actually very nice for him to make a mistake and get some comeuppance, at least in how the others are treating them for that mistake, and they were rightly pissed. But the reason why I'm bringing this all up is the thing that I thought was a little sort of uncapped, if you will, something that didn't feel like it got the payoff that I thought it was going to, is that when the eco-terrorist does come back in the morning, when because they go walking trying to find help the next day, or try to find the vehicle, and they find the old man cocooned in the car that they had to abandon earlier. The eco-terrorist like drives up, Titus gets out and is like, "Come on, we need to go now, like if we make a break for it, we might get back to civilization before sunset." I thought that there should have been like a moment where the Ranger either apologized to Mulder or maybe directly thanked the eco-terrorists for coming back. It felt like because of the way that they all reacted to that news when Mulder had let him go, it felt like there should have been a follow-up scene once he actually did come back to save them, to sort of pay that off with someone admitting they were wrong, or at the very least giving them thanks for showing up and being appreciative of it. It was just something that felt like it was like someone, whether or not they were literally admitting they were wrong or just doing something to imply that they know that they were wrong. It feels like that was kind of missing. And I think this is where I felt a bit weird about how it wrapped up, because night falls, they actually run over the spikes on the road, or the caltrips specifically, that were left probably by Titus's own group. So they get out of he gets out of the vehicle, and he looks kind of pissed, and the ranger makes a comment about shooting yourself in the foot. And then some of the green bugs start to appear. The eco-terrorist, Titus' his character, he just runs off into the night. Seemingly that's him gone, he's dead, because he's run off into the darkness. And I felt like that was a bit of a dumb ending for him. I thought, why wouldn't he try and get back in the car? I guess he's panicking, but it just kind of felt like a very sudden, I guess he's gone now, which is weird, because we had this payoff of him coming back when everyone thought he was going to abandon them. They didn't really acknowledge that in a way that felt like satisfying, and then he's just gone now, he's dead. That was a bit strange. If anything, if you had the scene in the car where the ranger was more friendly with them because he did come back and save them, it would have probably added more weight to the whole, oh shucks, we just drove over one of my own traps and that's kind of screwed us over. There'd have been more weight in that if they'd already kind of made up. The fact that we never really got that, and then the ranger's like, oh, this idiot shot himself in the foot, it kind of feels like, I don't know, like nothing changed in a way. It felt like there should have been an up and down there as far as the character dynamics were going. So that was a bit weird. I will say though, as much as I think it ends quite abruptly, I did appreciate and was surprised that Mulder and Scully actually get cocooned to the point where it greens out and they're seemingly like screwed. The best I can tell is that it just happened to be close enough to dawn that the bugs didn't have enough time to fully kill them or anything. So we get like guys in hazmat suits and vans showing up. Presumably Mulder's radio broadcast got out there somehow. The episode ends with them all in quarantine and being given treatment, and they've all got rashes all over their face and they've been exposed to whatever. And it just kind of ends in this downbeat moment where Mulder feels bad because he brought Scully to the forest and said it'd be a fun trip. And also the government's going to get rid of these things by burning the forest and releasing what knows into the air. So I think the ending, it does feel very abrupt. It feels like there was more that could have been done and more stuff that could have been paid off, particularly with some trust building between the eco-terrorist and the ranger. I think that could have been interesting to do. As it is, it kind of feels like they don't really have much of an ending as characters. The episode just kind of, okay, we're done now, so that's it. So I will levy that critique, and I think because of that, I probably like the episode in the Arctic or the Alaskan base, whatever it was, better than this one. But this was a fun episode. Like the simple rules of like staying in the light makes us safe. And there's that scene when they do have just the one light bulb, and Scully can see the green bugs in the corner of the room where there's shadows, and you realize just how close they are and how the light is like just this very, very small bubble that's keeping them safe. And I love that stuff. That feels like they're just hanging on by the skin of their teeth. And they even say that the bugs are probably in the light. They just can't swarm the way they can in the darkness. So the light's keeping them safe. But it made it feel quite creepy. It was like, oh shit, they're like all around us. Like as soon as the light ends and the shadow begins, they're right there. And that's a cool feeling. That's a great little horror movie kind of feeling. And I enjoyed that. So fun episode, but not without its storytelling faults, or without maybe an unsatisfying kind of ramp up to a conclusion. It just kind of feels like it suddenly comes to a stop, but not without its own little details that make it surprising, like Mulder and Scully actually going through the experience of being cocooned, and now that's something they're always going to remember going through, which I was not expecting. So I do appreciate that at the very least. The guest stars were fine as well, by and large. I enjoyed them all sparring off of each other. I appreciated the debates of of looking after the forest and all that stuff. I thought that was all nicely interwoven into the episode. So I appreciate that. And it felt like I lived in part of the world because this conflict was already ongoing and they already had these opinions of each other. And we felt like we were Mulder and Scully being dropped into the middle of it. In a way that I thought was quite smart. So yeah, Darkness Falls is a really solid episode, but not perfect and not without its faults. So that's where I come down on that. And next episode of the X-Files, we have an episode called Tombs. and that is TOOMS, not tomb as in a crypt, not with a B at the end. Here's the description on IMDb. Eugene Toombs is a name. Eugene Toombs, a supernatural killer whom Mulder helped incarcerate, is released on parole. That sounds so similar to a previous episode, where the guy he helped put away was like sending him letters and stuff like that. Like, I'm sure it's different. I'm sure the episode is going to feel very different to that. But the way this is described in that single sentence makes it sound just like that episode. But I'm curious. We'll see how this one goes. It's got a good rating on IMDb, which is always nice. So we'll see how it goes. But that is my thoughts on this X-Files episode. Thank you very much for joining me. And I am aware this one's a day later than normal. It wasn't planned that way. Everything this week's been a day later because I couldn't get 2 things out on Wednesday like I'd planned. But hopefully you'll forgive me and enjoy X-Files over the weekend. Thank you very much for joining me. You can support everything over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. Help keep all the stuff coming. And of course, get some bonuses if you're interested. Like monthly Columbo reviews, which I'm doing. See you next time, guys. Keep watching TV. Have you got any vanilla?